On the Record with WRAL News.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of On the Record. Tonight, let's talk about President Trump's vision for the future. He says he wants to bring manufacturing back to the United States, and he says tariffs can make it happen.
Jobs and factories will come roaring back into our country, and you see it happening already. We will supercharge our domestic industrial base.
So how exactly will tariffs bring back manufacturing? Here's an example. Now keep in mind, it is much more complicated than this, but here's the gist. If a company can make a widget in China for $5 because of cheap labor, but making that same widget in America costs $9, the company is going to choose the cheaper option. But if the president tariffs or taxes those companies 100% on shipments from China, now that $5 widget costs $10, turning the $9 American-made widget into the cheaper option. The tariff acts as an incentive for those companies to build and manufacture and work in America. That's the theory, anyway. Now, critics will say that those companies are just going to keep buying from China and charge us more, past that 100% increase onto the consumer. Or we might just stop buying stuff because it gets too expensive. And if we stop buying stuff, that's bad for the economy. It could lead to layoffs, economic woes, or even a recession. But let's say that tariff theory does work. Suppose companies do bring manufacturing back to the United States. Well, tonight we want to explore what that might look like, because you'll want to be ready when it does. Manufacturing today is less like the Industrial Revolution and more like an episode of The Jetsons. And frankly, we don't have enough people who understand that. So we talked to professors, industry leaders, and workers' advocates about the real return to manufacturing: automation.
They keep telling us that we really don't need the workers as much as we need engineers.
I would never thought even 5 years ago now that the automation is where it is.
The current trend is the technology and the automation.
It does look like science fiction. It can be scary, let's be honest. It can be a little alarming to some people.
There is no way around it.
So, since we can't get around it, let's just dive right in, shall we? And trust me, if you have not been paying attention to what's happening in this space, some of this is about to shock you. Let's start with this factory in Mexico that makes beer, because after you see this, you might need one. These are the people who make Modelo and Corona, some of the most purchased beers in the world. They bottle them by the millions, and they use 70 laser-guided vehicles that work non-stop on the floor and replaced 250 forklift operators. Now, with automation and AI, they do everything with just 6 people.
Frankly, laser-guided vehicles, when they need a battery change, they go up, they pull up, and they say, change my battery. You know, employees need breaks, employees need lunches, employees call in sick. It's just the human factor that with a laser-guided vehicle, you don't.
But some companies can do it with less than 6 people. This is the port of Rotterdam in the Netherlands, one of the busiest shipping ports in the world, where they load and unload simultaneously, entirely with robots. Those transporters that you see there are fully automated, driven by AI.
This is the land of the robots, isn't it? Just talk me through it. It starts over there. What happens at that end?
At that side, the truck comes in. He activates the crane. There's nobody on the crane.
And then where is it put?
He puts it in the stack.
It's quite spooky to think we are the only 2 squidgy human beings in all this.
Yes.
Right.
In China, they're leading the way with something called dark factories. Sounds sinister, but they call them that because the lights are off. Robots can work in the dark. They can operate an entire production line from raw materials to finished product with automation. This is a promo video from Chinese company Xiaomi. It's an 80,000 square foot facility that produces a new smartphone every 3 seconds. The company's founder gave a tour on X, showing the handful of people who actually work there, wearing clean suits, monitoring production from what looks like the bridge of the Starship Enterprise. They have an EV facility too, with the same story: a new car from raw material to road every 76 seconds. And they report doing it with just 20 people and 381 robots. Now, for some perspective, in 1980, the Ford Motor Plant in Dearborn, Michigan, made far less complicated vehicles, mind you, and they did it with 30,000 people. To be frank, those days aren't coming back. This is where we are headed. So we brought in 2 professors from NC State who are helping our young people to get ready. So one of the goals of the tariffs that we have been talking back is to bring back the golden age of American manufacturing. How far do you think we are from those golden age years back in the 60s and 70s?
We've seen a pickup since we had the pandemic. I think that's what started it for us, when companies started coming to us and asking for help. Asking how do we bring manufacturing back, and they knew that they needed to apply modern technology, and automation and robotics is obviously going to be part of that.
So that's what it's going to take. That's a big part of the way the system runs nowadays?
Yes.
How complicated is that for a company to undertake when they're not used to something like that?
Yeah, that's kind of what the role I'm playing with in the department is how to integrate robotics, some of the newer technology fields into the automation. And right now the companies are kind of experimenting with that task, but they're not really sure how to do that integration.
So these companies are coming to you and asking, how do we do this? But the answers are pretty vast because there are a lot of companies doing it in very dynamic ways across the globe.
Yes, and of course there's more and more modern technology that are coming online. Part of the research that we're working on is how do we make these automation systems more flexible? And with that is using machine learning, AI, those type of concepts to build a system that can adjust and adapt itself to be more agile.
When I think of the manufacturing that my grandfather was involved in, he graduated high school, got married, started a family, started working at the factory. And over his years there, he worked his way up to being a foreman and a manager in that factory. But it didn't take formal collegiate or undergraduate or even community college types of degrees, nothing like that. He just went right to work. But I feel like that's not really the same path nowadays.
No, and we're also part of the economic development in this area. So when we have large companies that are looking at setting up factories around this area, we get involved. And what has been very common over the past couple of years is that they keep telling us that we really don't need the workers as much as we need engineers. Because they said any factory that we build today is going to be fully automated, and we need a lot of engineers to run them. And that is also one of the reasons why the College of Engineering at NC State right now is expanding from 10,000 students to about 14,000 students. And that is the demand coming from the local industry, that they need more engineers every year.
Obviously, removing people from the process of creating a product for people is going to be something that will be argued against here in the United States. I mean, unions are not going to stand for dark factories to be running in this country. Is that something that we should fear in a way, or do we have to accept the inevitability that this is the way the world is moving?
I think that there is no way around it. If we're going to be competitive, if we're going to produce goods that are affordable, we have to adopt automation into the production. And that is why the university is also now getting more and more involved with workforce training. So you're up training, so somebody that might have been a welder or something else in the past gets upgraded to more of an advanced operator. And so that's where there's a big push around the country for all types of workforce training programs. And the university is going to play a big role in that.
Automation is there to, of course, it can make things more efficient, make a factory safer, but it also is there to cut costs by having fewer people to pay. Which is why you put the upfront investment there so that over the long term, you don't have to pay as many employees to make the product. I mean, there just simply is not the same amount of jobs when you have robotics replacing people.
They're different jobs. So if you have somebody that has been a welder, if that person gets trained to program robots that do the welding, he might be able to control a few robots and they will be doing the job 24/7. And that way that you can produce more with less resources, but there might not be less people overall, if that makes sense.
Well, typically, if you were doing something 24/7, you would need more than one person. So you'd be so instead of having 3 or 4 employees doing that work, you now have 1.
But sometimes it's too expensive to have multiple shifts for certain types of production. So instead of just having one shift with people, you can run multiple shifts, but utilizing the automation. And the people that would do the welding are now in charge of programming the robots. Because even if you're going to program a robot to do welding, you still need to have the welding knowledge. Otherwise, it's not going to work anyway, right?
Is there anything that you see where you look another 10, 15, 20 years down the line and imagine what this sector might look like?
It's really hard for me to look that far in the future. I would never thought even 5 years ago now that the automation is where it is. But in some ways you see that automation is going really slow. In some ways you see it's happening really, really fast there.
What does the world look like if automation reaches its potential, especially with autonomous vehicles, which would completely change all type of transportation, shipping? You know, when you think of the idea of an automated grocery store, automated everything, restaurants, how do we balance that world?
I think that there are going to be certain things that people might try, and then they're going to back off from it because it wasn't a good experience. So we've seen from Japan where they have automatic restaurants where they're robotic waiters, and they've tried to introduce that in the United States as well, but people don't really like it. It might be a novelty in the beginning, but you can't have the same conversation with a robot that you can have with a human being. So I think that there's still certain things that we might try it, and it might be a fun thing for a little bit, and then we're going to back off from it.
Well, thanks to both of you for coming in. I could talk to you for a long time, but I know you have classes to teach, so we'll let you go. Appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you very much.
Now, some of you might be thinking, wow, this certainly seems important, but it also seems really big picture. In that case, let's zoom in, because this technology is redefining the survival of North Carolina's backbone.
What I'm noticing the most is how it's getting into everything. For example, we've got position papers on a number of topics. We have a position paper that talks about, automation in farming. So it's in places that you wouldn't necessarily expect.
Coming up next, what automation looks like in our state's biggest industry, the opportunity for farmers, and the problem, when we're back on The Record. Bolstering manufacturing should be important to you. It's certainly important to the state. It's one of North Carolina's biggest industries with 470,000 workers, but it's not the biggest. The foundation of North Carolina's success and our identity is in our largest industry, agriculture. It generates $111 billion for our state and our economy every year. Accounts for 728,000 jobs. That is 16% of our total workforce. That is nearly 1 out of every 5 people. And much like manufacturing, automation is creating an arms race, pushing out traditional workers. It's tough to fight for the smaller family-owned farms. Between 1992 and 2022, North Carolina has lost more than 10,000 family-owned farms, while the number of corporate-owned farms has more than doubled. And it's easy to see why. They can invest big money into technology and automation, like this John Deere tractor. It has an autonomous mode. It works the field all by itself with an empty seat using AI and programming. And if this doesn't look Cyberdyne enough for you, try this. John Deere also rolled these out, a fully electric, entirely autonomous vehicle. Doesn't even have a driver's seat. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, Dan, I'm pretty sure some of our local farms can't afford a few of those, and you'd be right, but I'm just getting started. Let's look now at something that needs a much bigger down payment. This is a vertical farm, a company called Bowery in New Jersey. It is a 4-story warehouse. They make romaine lettuce that, in some cases, is never touched by human hands. Everything is done with robotics and AI.
If things are kind of moving on their own a little bit, why would a human being need to get up here when typically these trays are brought down for processing and kind of intervention?
We don't really think about how people are involved in the growing process, but how do we take people out of the growing process?
Yeah.
Our goal is to actually have as few people walking around our plants as possible.
These types of facilities are popping up all over the world, and with fewer employees, they can quickly become profitable. I mean, think about it. They never worry about the weather, no insects, they don't use pesticides, they use less water. Also, when you're growing indoors and controlling all of that, you can grow anything, anywhere, year-round. The New York Times profiled a facility in Kentucky that produces 10 million heads of lettuce a year. And one executive said, we can grow in the Antarctic, we can be on an island, we can be on the moon or in the space station. We spoke to an advocate for farm workers who has watched these types of facilities pop up and sees them as a real threat.
So you have these corporate farms that have the capital to invest in Mexico, and because of the climate in Mexico, everything is under the roof. And so everything is, they got climate control, they got all kinds of technology, automation, they got irrigation, drip irrigation to grow crops under the roof. And the small family farmer who competes, say, like in the strawberries, they can't compete with Driscoll, who grows strawberries from Washington State to Baja year-round.
And I'm curious, how do you think they pick the strawberries in some of those year-round facilities? I'll give you one guess.
And now we're going to meet one of the 16 robots that pick the strawberries, and they picked 200,000 strawberries in the last month. It's ready to pick because their hair is sticking up like that, a bit like David Bowie. So there you have a perfect strawberry. Delicious.
That was a farm in England. There's another one that was profiled by the LA Times in California. The robots use cameras and AI to determine which strawberries are ripe and which ones need more time.
That's what we have to compete with, the small family farmer who doesn't have that capital, who doesn't have that technology, who doesn't have under the roof climate control in the U.S. If they had the capital, perhaps they could move that route, but that's not what we're talking about in the U.S.
The fact is, our family farms need to innovate. As corporate farms continue to cut their margins with automation, a traditional farm with people working land won't be able to compete. And the fear is they will shutter or be gobbled up unless the workforce evolves.
I've always said that farm workers, the workers who come and work on those farms, which is my main concern, the impact it's going to have on them, there's got to be a just transition from that job into something else. And education is going to be an important part to invest for the children of farm workers, because they're not going to be able to follow in their parents' footsteps.
Coming up, how you can ride this wave of innovation instead of being washed away by it, and what's being done to help keep North Carolina at the forefront of this new frontier when we're back on The Record. This whole episode, we have focused a lot on automation, how these robots out there and their programming are changing industries and jobs. But these companies, remember, are still going to need people. A report from the World Economic Forum predicts that AI will displace millions of jobs, but will create 69 million new jobs. It's a total loss of 14 million. Which stat do you want to be in? And if you think that is some far-off thing, it is not. That report is based on the next 5 years. But companies and schools and state leaders know this, and they are preparing the next generation. Earlier, you heard from those professors at NC State. Now, Wake Tech is building a new facility for its advanced manufacturing program. NC Central University started an AI research institute last year. The training can start as early as high school. We recently profiled a bunch of Triangle area students who compete in robotics competitions. They design, build, and program these robots. It's a field that's moving so quickly, even teenagers can see the progression. Imagine what they're going to see throughout their career.
Like how much just FRC, like as a robotics competition has developed in like even just like the last 10 years is crazy. I mean, so like, if you watch matches from like 5 years ago, you can just see the progress that's come. The robots are faster, they're more accurate, like everything is more dynamic.
Industry insiders agree. These efforts in education are huge and can prepare our state for what's happening if people buy in.
We absolutely can bring manufacturing back and make it stronger, certainly, than it is right now. It's absolutely evolved, though. It's not going to be the manufacturing that we saw in the 50s and 60s. Last year alone, we trained over 14,000 people, and many of them were technicians, not just engineers, not just managers. And so this goes to show that there is a great demand for those technicians and for those people to have those credentials. Somebody is using them. Somebody is paying for these courses. And so the demand is there for sure.
Now, I understand that this can be intimidating. If you are my age or older, you've probably seen what it looks like when industry changes rapidly. When I grew up in the Ohio Valley, factories were the backbone, from Wheeling to Weirton. When you drove up the river on a Friday night, you'd see those lights glowing for high school football games. Little towns built around industry. Well, all those lights are out now. Those jobs went overseas. Those high schools closed and consolidated. And it's true that the new manufacturing won't bring that back. Thousands of employees working multiple shifts. But don't forget, those jobs were tough and dangerous. Modern manufacturing is cleaner, safer, more efficient, and higher paying. Yes, there will not be as many jobs, but they will be better jobs. And we need qualified people to fill them if we want to keep up.
I feel like we're always going to want that human component. I don't think we're going to get to the point personally where, as you said, all of our grocery stores are essentially a giant vending machine. I think we all learned during the pandemic, we still need to have some type of human interaction. And so I think we're going to be looking for that right balance.
And we will see as time goes by what that balance is. If you have something to say about tonight's conversation, let us know. Email me your comments, your questions, or criticisms to ontherecord@wral.com. You can also email me directly at dan@wral.com. Tell me what is on your mind, and we will go in depth on WRAL News at 7 o'clock. In the meantime, I will leave you with a video of a grocery store in London that's fully automated like a giant vending machine. Thank you for watching On the Record.